What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today we're back talking about my latest draft. This will be the last draft video now before the team selection video, which will come next week, of course, as always, sometime before the Gameweek 1 deadline. Now, I had a look at my last draft video, which is about 3 or 4 days ago now. I don't usually do these in such quick succession, but I wasn't completely happy with it. I think I changed too many things, too many different price points, too many players that I'm not really too sold on. And I think I've come back to a structure that I'm much more happy with players that I definitely want, with some big hitters in there as well, some decent defenders, and overall, I think this squad will be much more what my Gameweek 1 team will actually be. I'm not saying it'll be exactly the same. We've still got transfers that could be made before the Gameweek 1 deadline. We've still got pre-season matches to watch, fitness issues, COVID issues, all that kind of thing. So I'm still going to be tinkering like any good FPL manager. Like, we're all tinkering at the moment. I am no different just because I have a YouTube channel. But I do think this team is much more likely to be similar to the one that I put out for the team selection video next week. So if you enjoy it, make sure to give it a like. I know people always like draft videos. Subscribe if you're new around here. We're trying to hit that 100k. Really appreciate everyone that's subscribed so far. Let's quickly talk about our sponsor and then we'll get into the draft. So this video has been sponsored by FanTeam. Thanks very much to them for getting involved again. As I said last week, you're going to love it for 2 reasons. €1 million up for grabs, 200 grand for first place, 100 grand for second place, paying all the way to 5,659. And it's very similar to FPL, so all you FPL managers out there will probably be able to cross over to this game quite nicely. €25 entry, similar to what some of you will pay for min-league entry anyway. And I can see a bunch of you have signed up already. If you haven't, there's a very handy sign-up link. That's my sign-up link in the description below, so make sure to use that if you do want to play. After I've gone through my FPL draft in this video, I'm going to take you through my current fan team draft as well to give you an idea of what I'm thinking. Otherwise, let's jump into the video. So as always, before you kind of look at players that have been individually selected or the team as a whole at the end, make sure you listen throughout the video to my reasoning for those players. Obviously, it's fine to disagree. Everyone has their own opinions, but I think sometimes people look at the team and all they think about is the players that aren't there rather than the ones that are there. So make sure you listen to what I'm saying and then comment, obviously, at the end of the video. We'll start with defence. So 4.5 million goalkeeper. I've not really changed my viewpoint on that. Certainly not spending 5.5 or above. And I don't really see a reason to spend 0.5 million more on someone like Ramsdale right now. If anything, I'd rather spend 5 million on outfield Sheffield United defender that I might then look to change down the line. Now, the only thing with McCarthy is Forster's back at Southampton now. He was on loan to Celtic last year. Now, straight away, obviously that would tell me if he was on loan, wasn't needed by the club, wasn't really obviously in favour. Of course, if they wanted him to be first choice, he would have been at the club. So I don't know if there's too many concerns about that, but he is a pretty decent goalkeeper, or he has been in the past. But McCarthy won his place last year after some mistakes from Gunn, and he pretty much kept his place for the rest of the season then. So I don't really have any concerns about him. And I have been looking at the first 16 fixtures. So from a wildcard perspective, we have to use our wildcard by game week 16. He has pretty decent fixtures when it comes to the 4.5 million goalkeepers, which is why he's in. Matt Ryan could be an option too. Even like a Leeds goalkeeper potentially. The one reason I'd maybe look at not having McCarthy is because I don't want to double on Southampton defence, and Kyle Walker-Peters could be an option at 4.5, but as you'll see in a sec, I've got some 4.5 million defenders that I'm pretty happy with, and I'll talk through them. Trent Alexander-Arnold is still in. Now, I was going to put Robertson in this draft, but I knew what the comments would be. There's no way you're going to go without Trent, etc. And you're right. If he's fit and ready to go for the start of the season, I will start with Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, a few people have made some good points about Robertson. Since lockdown, he's been pretty decent. Been taking some set pieces as well, especially like corners and stuff like that. I'm not sure we're going to see him on many free kicks given how good Trent is, but we might see him on some more corners going forward anyway, especially from that left-hand side. But until we see some pre-season minutes from Trent, I'm not going to be completely happy about having him in my Game Week 1 side. Now, at the last friendly, or the Community Shield, Klopp did say he was close to playing, or he's close to fitness, or close to being able to start games. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I would like to see him feature pre-season before I put him in my Game Week 1 side. If we get to Game Week 1 deadline and we've not seen him at all, there's a chance I'll start with Robertson. Not only can he, keep up with Trent on his day. He didn't over the whole of the last season, I get that. But on his day, he can keep up, maybe for 3 or 4 game weeks. Bearing in mind, the first few fixtures are not fantastic necessarily for clean sheets. And once I wildcard, obviously I can make the change again. There's always that worry that you don't start with Trent, he starts from Game Week 1, he goes nuts and he starts going up in price. Of course, that's a worry. But if we've not seen any minutes from him, I don't know if I want to risk it. But right now, he's in, because if he is fit and ready to go, of course he's going to be in the team. In defence, I've gone for double Wolves. I think Wolves, based on last year, one of the best defences. I personally don't think Doherty and Johnny missing out are going to be huge. It's not going to be massively detrimental to their clean sheet potential. I think players like Bolly are much more key to that. If Bolly was missing, it'd be a whole different conversation. But with Doherty, I'm sure they're going to replace him. We'll have to wait and see on the transfers there. And so far, they've not signed a new left back. So Vinagre is in. I do have 0.5 million in the bank. I do think there's quite a few £5 million defenders with potential. I'm not saying they haven't got concerns. Reece James, for example, is he absolutely nailed on? If he's not, then fair enough, you can't go for him. But if he is, or he looks like he's going to become nailed on, £5 million for Reece James is going to be a bargain this season. You've got Bellerin at £5 million, Luke Shaw at £5 million, who's pretty much nailed on at Man United as well. Again, Man United last year, one of the best defences if you're looking at underlying numbers, along with Wolves, who are also really good. So right now I've doubled up on Wolves because I think their fixtures can even warrant it for the defence. I know they play Man City in Game Week 2, but you can swap out one of them for another defender on your bench. And so overall, I think they're decent options. Size, £5 million. I know there's some concerns over the amount of yellow cards he got. I did look, and he got a lot of the yellow cards kind of in the first half of the season, not so many towards the end of the season. And I do wonder if that's partly because Bolly wasn't in the side. And so with him out, more defending to do, more mistakes to be made. When Bolly's in there, a much more solid unit. So I'd have to look into that a bit further, but that's on my mind that maybe that's why he got a lot of yellow cards, and that's why they can't kind of calm down towards the end of the season. So I think for £5 million for a Wolves defence, it's going to get plenty of clean sheets. Not too concerned about that. And on the bench, I've still got a £4 million defender in Johnson at West Ham. Could be Mitchell at Crystal Palace. I'm not fully decided on that, but I know I want a £4 million defender in there just for value, if anything else. And I've got Taylor from Burnley. Boring choice at 4.5 million, but you know what Burnley do? They keep clean sheets. And also, as a lot of people have pointed out, he rotates quite well with Vinagre as well. So as long as Vinagre is an option, Taylor can come in for that Man City game, for example, when Vinagre plays City in Game Week 2. Taylor can come in instead. And I've got Anguissa right now as my £4.5 million midfielder. As I said on a video recently, I'm not too excited about the 4.5 million options on the bench or for our bench. But as long as I get a playing one in, I'm pretty happy with that. On to midfield, a bit of a heavy hitting midfield. And look, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Aubameyang, who wasn't in the last draft. And I have genuinely considered going without him. If I'm happy to captain Salah in Game Week 1, for example, then it's only really Game Week 2 where I'd really want Aubameyang before I do what a lot of people are probably looking at, which is switching to a Man City midfielder. But I think arguably Aubameyang could be a better captain for Game Week 1. And he's also a good captain for Game Week 2. So maybe that's the best bet to go for. And also, I just don't see how I go into Game Week 3, maybe even Game Week 5, whenever it might be, without a Man City midfielder. I just don't want to run. It's not even a risk. I just know they're going to score loads of goals. I want one of their players. Whether it's De Bruyne, whether it's Sterling, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm quite interested in going for Sterling. But if De Bruyne's got penalties, then I just cannot turn that down. But ultimately, having Aubameyang in from the start saves an extra transfer down the line. Because if I didn't have Aubameyang, I would probably go for a cheaper midfielder and maybe put more money up front. And I don't think there's any issues with that. It's a good way to get Jamie Vardy in, for example, who's got a couple of good fixtures to start with. Game Week 4 and 5 are also good too. So Jamie Vardy has great fixtures to start. And then later on, you could take him out for a cheaper forward, like Chris Wood maybe, and then put the money in midfield to get the likes of Sterling or Kevin De Bruyne. So that's another way to do it. But the beauty about Aubameyang, that's easy to say for me, is once you've got him in there, it's just one transfer to go to a Man City midfielder. And it kind of makes sense from an FPL point of view to kind of have that flexibility, save one extra transfer basically, because shifting funds from Vardy into midfield means 2 transfers. And I could use that for something else. Maybe there's a different pre-season bandwagon I need to jump on. Maybe I've got an early injury or something like that. So that's why I'm doing that. And I also think for the first 2 weeks, he's probably the best captain option as well. So having him in and then being able to switch easily to a Man City midfielder, it just feels like it makes sense. And since that last draft video, I've pretty much built every single draft around Aubameyang. I'm still keeping Salah. There's a lot of talk in the community right now about maybe going without him. I think sometimes you get like I don't know if this is the right word, but you get like pre-season boredom. People are going through their drafts so much and so often. They're looking at every single combination of moves they can make. And eventually taking out Liverpool players comes up quite a lot. Look, maybe Salah won't do great for the first 3 game weeks, but I don't really want to take that risk given how good he can be on his day. And also, I'm going to want him longer term as well. So again, it's saving a transfer down the line. Doesn't mean you can't use transfers to swap in and out these big hitters. But I just think Salah could do really well in the first game week. No reason he can't get something against Arsenal and Chelsea. and then we'll crack on from there with some pretty good fixtures. There's some talk about going for Mane instead. I think I looked at the numbers from kind of the last 3 seasons. Salah has gone down points-wise year on year, and his expected goal involvement has also gone down, but it's still very high and higher than Mane. Big chances-wise, Mane and Salah exactly the same last year. So what's happening is Salah's becoming slightly less involved, and Mane's becoming slightly more involved. So they're starting to equal out, which I guess is why the price is the same. But again, with penalties and stuff, there's just no reason why I wouldn't go for Salah personally from the off. So he's in. And I also really like Spurs fixtures. I have taken a look at Ali. Again, I quite like the underlying stats for Ali. I looked at them this morning, and they're pretty decent. They're very comparable to Son. Now, Son is a great player. He always does better than his expected goal involvement because he's just a decent player. He's a good finisher. He's creating good chances and stuff like that. It's not that I'm doubting him, really. It's more that I wasn't expecting Ali to look as good as he was. And maybe if he has a decent pre-season and starts off well, for 8 million, obviously you save $1 million. It's not like they're the same price. Could be a good option. But right now I'm putting in Son because every single season he performs. And I just don't really see a reason why that won't happen this year. I know there's this talk about Kane playing more centrally, Son being stuck out wide. But I'm just not sure that's how it's going to play out in the early game week. So for right now, I'm on Son. And I think he's an easy swap to Greenwood. He's a potential easy swap to Rashford as well. I've got 0.5 million in the bank. Aubameyang to a Man City midfielder will save me 0.5 as well, as long as none of the players have gone up in price. So overall, I really like that midfield. St. Maximin, look, I'm not really sold on him. I'm not really sold on any of the £5.5 million midfielders. I don't think many stand out. For 0.5 more, I could go for James Ward-Prowse. That's something I'll consider. But I think Newcastle's opening fixtures are pretty decent. Obviously, since the Community Shield, there's another reason I'm putting this draft out as well. People are looking at Saka. Now, Saka did play, and I think that's really, really promising given his minutes under Arteta last season. So that looks good. But if they're going to play Nketiah or Lacazette down the middle, then Aubameyang's going to play left. Like, Aubameyang's not missing out from any games where he's fit. Which means on that right-hand side, you've got Saka can play there, Pepe can play there, Willian can play there. Are you telling me that Saka's going to play week in, week out, and new signing Willian and last year's big signing Pepe are just going to miss out? Sure, okay, one of them can maybe play like a number 10 position instead maybe, and another one will play right instead. But I just don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just in two minds about Saka. The amount of minutes he got under Arteta, the fact he kind of played the double game week twice, or played both games in the double game week when most other players didn't, I really like the look of him. But at the same time, there's just so much competition, I'd be a little bit worried. But again, maybe if I'm thinking about early wildcard, or I think there's a chance that I'll early wildcard, given the fixtures, which is one of the reasons I got Aubameyang in, maybe he's worth a punt. I don't think St. Maximin is such a better option than Saka. These absolutely must own by any stretch. Like I said, I'm not too sold on any of the 5.5s. Ultimately, look, maybe I go from Son to Ali. That saves me another $1 million. I got $1.5 million. I don't know, maybe I try and save 0.5 elsewhere from my forward line maybe, which I'll show you in a second. And then I can go straight from St. Maximin to Greenwood. So I could have Greenwood and Ali instead of Son and St. Maximin. Maybe that's a better way to do it. I don't know. But right now, this is how I'm set up. I think Aubameyang has to be in there. Salah's definitely going to be in there. And right now, I'm pretty sold on Son too. So currently, Werner is still in there. I've not really seen any reason not to go for him. I also like having a 9.5 million striker because I can pretty much go to any other player I want. 0.5 means I can go to Vardy. I can drop down to Martial. I don't have to find too much extra money to go up to Kane or Aguero. So I just like having him there, and I think Brighton away is a decent enough fixture. Liverpool's going to be tough, but it is at home. And then Chelsea have got some really good fixtures after that. And I'm just banking on Chelsea being an extremely good side this year from an attacking point of view, maybe even defensive too. But obviously, it is going to maybe take time for some of their players to gel. But to be honest, if Pulisic was fit to start the season, I would maybe look at fitting him in, potentially instead of Son as well. That's how much I think Chelsea are going to do well this season. But we'll wait and see. Werner's definitely in. I've got Calvert-Lewin back in. A lot of this basically relies on Everton signing some midfielders. There's Allen, they've been linked with James Rodriguez as well. If these players come in, I suddenly think Calvert-Lewin is a pretty good option. Now, maybe they'll change formation to go one up front, but if that happens, I think it will just push Richarlison wide and Calvert-Lewin will be the main man up front. I'm not too worried about Moise Kean. Maybe we'll get, again, some indication from pre-season. But I just like how well Calvert-Lewin did. If you disregard Game Week 30 to 38, and I'm not saying you should just forget about it completely, but you also can't forget about the previous 29 game weeks when he did really well. His numbers look good. He scored plenty of goals. that Everton side could be good again. Let's not forget, after lockdown, they didn't really have much to play for, not really much of a midfield and stuff like that. Maybe I'm trying to convince myself. I'm sure some people will think of it like that. But I just think if you're a bit of a numbers person, Calvert-Lewin's numbers are good. Sure, maybe he's not the best finisher, but he gets so many chances that eventually they're going in. And that's why he scored so many goals last season. I don't see why that won't happen again this year. Right now, I've got Mitrovic in there. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Antonio. A couple of good fixtures to start for Antonio. I've got the 0.5, so I'll be tempted to go back to him potentially instead of Mitrovic. But I think at 6 million right now, Mitrovic is probably the best forward. Ayew, not really interested at all. Che Adams, maybe. It depends how many minutes I think he's going to get. But Mitrovic nailed on. Going to play 90 minutes, penalties. Sure, he's not that exciting, I don't think, but for 6 million, he's probably about the best I'm going to get. So I think the forward line's looking pretty good. I think 3-4-3 is pretty much locked in for me. Although I will say, if Brewster moves to another Premier League club on loan, I will probably just go for him and move to a 3-5-2 or potentially even a 4-4-2 as well. Because I do think there's a lot of value in the kind of £5 million defenders. So I think you can go for it at the back without having to spend a huge amount of money. But that's the forward line. That's the whole team. That's my reasoning for it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. So as I said at the start of the video, there is potentially a lot of money to be won on Fantasy. So I'm excited. I'm going to play this year. I'm in Ireland, so I've got to use a different site to play it. But for everyone else, as long as your country is listed, you can play through Fantasy. Make sure you click that link in the description below. But the beauty is, if you think about that draft I've just talked about for FPL, which I do think will be very similar to the one I start with, you can pretty much bring that to Fan Team as well. Now, not all the prices are the same because some of the scoring is a little bit different. You get an extra point if you play a full game, extra point if you win, and stuff like that as well. So sometimes, like Man City players, for example, might be much better in Fan Team than they potentially are in FPL. Not that they're not good in FPL, of course, but there's almost more ways for them to get points in Fan Team. And so some players are more expensive. So if you look at my team, for example, Werner is 10 million in this. Aubameyang is actually cheaper. He's only 11 million, but he's a forward still in this game rather than a midfielder. So that makes a bit of a different choice as well. I'd probably start with him. But what I've done is mostly converted my team over and then made a couple of changes. So Vinagre, for example, is only 4 million. Very, very good price if he's going to start. You've got £4 million midfielders as well. So that kind of makes up for some of the bigger players being more expensive. Rather than having 4.5 million as the cap for midfielders, it's 4 million in Fan Team. So Stevens, for example, is 4 million. Should be playing midfielder for Brighton. Johnson's still 4 million for West Ham as well. And I've got Taylor on the bench and then a £4 million goalkeeper as well. So McCarthy's the same price, Seiss is the same price, Trent's the same price. The only place it gets a little bit different is midfield. So St. Maximum, for example, is 6.5. Saka is 7 million in Fantasy, so definitely not interested at that price. So I've got Armstrong and Zaha in there instead. But otherwise, I've still got Son, still got Salah, Werner, Aubameyang, Mitrovic in there 6.5 instead of 6. So overall, it's a very similar team from FPL. And that's really what I like about this game is I don't have to think too much outside of the box for what I already do for FPL. There's some subtle differences with some of the scoring and things like that, and obviously the player pricing. For a lot of it, it's not like going to a completely different game where there's different rules, where midfielders, like defensive midfielders, get points as well. That's so different to FPL. It takes a bit more to get involved with, whereas Fan Team is a little bit easier. So if you think this is something you'd be good at, if you want to try and get a chance at winning some prizes, like I said, it's €25 entry. There's a very handy link in the description below. I'd highly advise you to use that. And obviously it is gambling, so there's website links to that in the description as well. But let me know what you think. Let me know what your drafts are looking like as well. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, make sure to give it a like. Like I said, that will be the last draft video now before the team selection video comes out next week. For anyone that is new to my channel, I basically have been producing content for nearly 4 years on FPL now, and every single game week without fail I'll be here to talk about my team, to give you a preview of the key news, talking points and stuff like that on my game week preview video. There's loads of live streams as well. You can get your questions in and stuff like that. So if you are new around here, if you've not already hit that subscribe button, please make sure you do. I'd really appreciate it. Lots of you have done it already in pre-season, so you're absolutely legends. And lastly, if you do want to support me via Patreon, I do have some extra content over there, Slack channels and things like that. There's a very handy link for that as well in the description below. Otherwise, I'll leave it there for this one. I'll catch you again tomorrow for another FPL video. Thanks for watching and see you soon.